Welcome to Disney World. That's me, Morgan, from the very unofficial travel guides. I travel all around the world to popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. I'm also a former Disney cast member and a self-proclaimed old person. I'm gonna be 50 real soon, and I'm just so happy about that. And I know now what you're saying.
What? Morgan, you don't look a day over 25.
To that I would say,
thank you.
And a special thanks to the team of skilled surgeons at the Este World Clinic in Istanbul, Turkey. Listen, I know there are a lot of people who are older than me who still enjoy going to the Disney parks. There are people who are younger than me who enjoy going to the Disney parks. I just realized after our most recent visit that I can't do it like I used to. I do not find getting my head bashed around on the rock and roller coaster fun or worth waiting an hour for. I can no longer drink around the world and then be up the next morning at 7 for rope drop. I can't ride the new Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster or Expedition Everest without doing a certain thing at a certain time in order to not let it ruin my entire day. And I wanted to sit down and make a video about some of these things in case you have a visit coming up and you haven't been there in a long time, or if maybe you've never been there and you are thinking of planning your first trip. If you go there every year and you are a Disney expert, you are not gonna need to watch this video, but hey, I'd be happy if you would. And if you decide to leave, please press the thumbs up before you go. Spoiler alert. In order to give you enough information to decide if your body can handle the things that these new attractions do, I'm gonna have to tell you what these new attractions do. If you wanna be completely surprised and take a risk with that slip disc in your neck that you got from trying not to spill your cup of coffee while you sneezed, then get ready to skip certain parts of this video. And there's just one other thing I wanna warn you about here. Some of the things that I'm gonna tell you about are, as always, just my opinions about the way things are right now. And if you want to participate in the comments, I really invite you to do that. The only thing I'm gonna say is I'm blocking the word woke. On so many Disney related videos lately, in the comments, people are throwing around this word woke. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't know what people's obsession with this word is or what it's supposed to mean. So if you wanna participate and you can't explain what you wanna say without using the word woke, then just don't. And now let's have a magical day. Before we actually get into the parks, Before we get to the specific attractions at the parks, let me just remind you that visiting Walt Disney World nowadays requires some planning steps that may be new to you and are definitely somewhat complicated if you are not tech savvy. Before you plan your trip, you are going to have to set up an account at the My Disney Experience. This is an app you can download, or you can do it on your computer if you go to the Disney World website. And if you have ever set up a new email address for yourself, or an Apple ID, or a Netflix account, or something like that, you're gonna be fine doing this. That's the easy part. From there, it does get kind of complicated depending on what you're trying to do with it, but it's not really something you can avoid. Once you've gotten that downloaded and set up, make sure your information is correct, and I would suggest putting your credit card in there already and play around with the app a little bit so you get familiar with it before you go on your trip. The app is free, and using most of the features are free, and you're not gonna accidentally buy something with it, so don't worry about that. Like I said, before you go on the trip, make sure you have the app set up, your information is correct, and put a credit card in there because you're gonna need that for some of the upgrade features that we're gonna be talking about in a second. Not a second, let's be honest, probably more like a couple minutes. Once you know when you wanna go, there's a really important step that you have to do now, and that is go to the app or to the Disney World website and make sure that there is availability for the days you wanna go, and reserve your parks in advance. Listen to me. Are you listening? Do not plan a trip to Orlando hoping you're going to visit Disney World if you don't buy your tickets and make a park reservation in advance. This is a new thing that you have to do if you want to get into a Disney park. If you don't do this, then chances are you're gonna fly all the way to Florida with maybe your kids, maybe your grandkids, telling them,
"We're going to Disney World."
And then you're not gonna get in. It is of the utmost importance that you do those steps if you want to visit a Disney park anytime in the near future. Also, if you're visiting the parks with groups of people that didn't all buy the package together, then another thing that I highly recommend you do before you get to the parks is link everybody together in the app. So you're gonna need to pick like one group leader in a way, and then send the invitations to all the people who are going to be there with you so that you can select them in the app and make a big group out of it. This is another thing that you can and probably should do before you leave, and just to be honest, I would consider myself pretty good with computers, and I couldn't get this figured out without having to call Disney to get them to help me. If you're planning on making any dining reservations for everybody or using any of the upgrades like the skip the line passes, used to be called Fast Pass, we're gonna be talking about that too, then you need to have everybody linked together in the group before you get to the parks. Don't wait until you get there to do that. Altogether, a big theme here is visiting a Disney World park at the moment takes a lot more planning in advance than it did 20 years ago and even 5 years ago. So speaking of the skip the line passes, we know Disney pioneered the Fast Pass system, which is a way that you could basically make reservations for certain attractions, then go do something else and come back to that attraction with basically not having to wait in line for it. It used to be one of the things that made a visit to Disney so special and a great value that, you know, if you compare that to Universal's Express Pass, which can cost over $100 a day, it was something that made Disney really great. Fast forward to 2023 and it's not free anymore, and it's not even called Fast Pass. There are 3 versions of the Skip the Line Pass nowadays, and only one of them is free. So let me just go through those really quickly, and then we're gonna get to the attractions. The free version of this Skip the Line system is called a boarding group for the newest, biggest attractions that are super popular at the moment. On our recent visit, the one that we had to get a boarding group for was the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind roller coaster in Epcot. Disney is kind of smart about this, and they know how popular these new attractions get, and so they don't want people to be standing in line for like 3 hours for that. So what they do is they call them boarding groups to people, and it's like an hour-long window where you can show up to that ride and get to ride it once. If you don't have a boarding group, you cannot ride the ride. And if you don't have the app set up in your phone, you can't get into a boarding group. Do you understand now how important that is? Don't say I didn't warn you. So at a certain time in the morning when the park opens, everybody is going to be looking on their phones, tipping on the button to try to get a boarding group assignment. It all goes by very quickly, and like I said, if you don't have everybody in your group linked together in your app, then some people will get a boarding group for this time, and some people will get a boarding group for this time, and then you won't be riding it together. Sound complicated? It is, but that's what a visit is like nowadays, and that's why I want to make this video for you. The next level of the Skip the Line Pass at Disney World nowadays is called Genie Plus. This is something that you can book day by day. If you decide you don't need it for a certain day, then you just don't pay for it. And it is the most similar thing to the old Fast Pass system. It's where you can look in the app and see what times are available for certain rides, make a reservation for that ride, and then you can go do other things, wait in the normal line for other rides and attractions, and then when your time comes up, then you just sashay right up onto that ride. However, it doesn't count for all the rides, and that leads us to the final version of it, which is called Lightning Lane. The super popular rides, like Avatar Flight of Passage and Animal Kingdom, they're not on Genie Plus. So you could pay for this old Fast Pass system, but you're still gonna have to pay more if you wanna skip the line for those attractions too. Lightning Lane is a one-time charge that you can choose to do to move to the front of the line on those attractions. I can only say it again, all of this is done in the app, so if you don't have the app set up with your current information in it before you go, it might hold you back from getting some of those upgrades if you're interested in them. All right, I think I got you kind of prepared to actually get there, and now let's go into the parks and talk about some certain attractions. If you are a person of an advanced age, let's say, like I am, or maybe even a little bit older than me, there are some things that I think you should know. And I'm gonna skip some of the really obvious attractions, like there's a newish roller coaster at the Hollywood Studios park called Slinky Dog Dash, but it's all outside. You can see the whole thing, so you can very well look at it and judge, okay, it goes up there, it goes down there, that's how fast it is. I think my body can take it. But there are other rides like Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom that you can't see everything from the front, and those are the kind of rides that we're gonna talk about now. So staying at Animal Kingdom, talking about Expedition Everest, spoilers coming up, this is a very large, very fast roller coaster. One thing that it doesn't do is throw you from side to side a lot. So if that's gonna be a problem for you, you don't have to worry about that on Expedition Everest. However, it does go backwards, and it goes backwards really quickly around some turns
in the dark.
This is the part that is really hard for me, and when it gets to the backwards part, I literally have to twist myself around in the car so I'm facing forward, or it makes me totally sick. And since I am getting older and am not as flexible and agile as I used to be, this twisting around action, it's getting difficult. So other than that, I would say Expedition Everest is a very smooth roller coaster that does not throw you around a lot, but it's fast and it goes backwards through the dark. And now we're gonna throw it over to another ride that does throw you around a lot, and that is the dinosaur ride. From the outside, this just looks like a big sort of museum, and that's what it's themed to be. They send you back in the past, and you have to try to find a dinosaur. You are in these Jeeps, just like the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. And why did I say Indiana Jones? Indiana Jones. And this ride is bumpy. There's not a lot of like going up and down like a roller coaster, but you're in this vehicle that is motion controlled, and it's just really, really shaky and throws you around from left to right. So if you do have a problem with your neck or your back, this really might be one that you're gonna wanna skip. Another one to mention in the same category, which might be surprising to you, is the safari. One thing that makes Animal Kingdom so special is these safaris that you can go on, where you get in a Jeep and you go through the savannah, and you get really close to live animals that are really there, but some of the pathways are also kind of bumpy. And I think people who are very susceptible to motion sickness or have a very sensitive neck or back, I think this might also be something that could be borderline for you. And I just want to do one special mention before we move on to the next park, and that is one of the newer attractions in Animal Kingdom is the Avatar Flight of Passage ride, and that thing is amazing. You can't see what happens in there from the outside either, but I don't think that there's anything you're gonna have to worry about unless you are really afraid of heights or get sick in motion-based simulators. Okay, now let's move on to Epcot. One of the big thrilling rides at Epcot is called Test Track. It's not a new ride. I'm pretty sure if you've been to Disney in the last, however long, you know this ride. But just in case you don't know the ride, it is a very fast car ride, which it's really just like driving in a car with somebody who's driving really crazy around turns and stopping and going. There's not a lot of like side to side forces. It's mostly just going really fast quickly, but also stopping quickly. The way that the cars are set up, it's really easy to brace yourself as well. Another ride that you can't see anything from the outside is called Mission Space, and Mission Space is probably the most realistic flight simulator that there is. If you can't deal with spinning around in circles and sustained actual positive G-forces, then definitely don't ride this ride, because you're in a small capsule looking at a screen that's really close to you, and without you being able to see it from the outside, the whole thing is spinning around.
I can't ride it.
However, they do have a chilled out version of it that is less intense, and I have ridden that and it's okay. Of course, the big new attraction at Disney World that so many people are talking about is the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind coaster, and this is a fantastic, amazing attraction. Marcus and I got to ride it 3 times using a boarding group, using Lightning Lane, and then we got another boarding group later in the day. It's just amazing, but it does some crazy things and it's not for everybody. The thing that I was the most worried about before our first ride is I had heard that the cars spin, and to me, spinning is like on the Tilt-O-Whirl or something, that there is a possibility that if the weight is in a certain way, that you could just be going whoosh, 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 whoosh the whole time. The last time I went on a Tilt-O-Whirl, I did that.
And it was not cute.
That's not what happens on this ride. The experience starts out with a pretty forceful launch where the cars go from a standstill and are pushed down a straight piece of track, but you're facing backwards for that launch. So that's gonna be a problem for some of you, I'm sure. During the ride, which is mostly in the dark, by the way, but there are several scenes where you're like looking at a movie that is synchronized with the motion of the train on the way. It's technologically fascinating. And as you are traversing this whole indoor area, the cars are being forced to move like from right to left to right in order to keep you looking where you're supposed to be looking. They're not doing this, but you're also not facing directly forward for the whole ride. It can be very disorienting at times, but if you can do Expedition Everest, I think you can also do Guardians of the Galaxy. The direction of the cars was never changing so fast for me that I couldn't keep my head looking in like the forward-facing direction, and somehow that really helped me not get into that sort of dizzy feeling that I know I get on other rides. One more thing I need to tell you about is one of the super popular attractions in Epcot right now is where the Maelstrom used to be in Norway. Thumbs up if you remember the Maelstrom. So that ride has been rebuilt and rethemed to Frozen with Elsa and Anna and all the characters from those wonderful films. But it also goes backwards, and there is a somewhat thrilling drop towards the end of the ride. This drop is a little bit bigger than the drop on Pirates of the Caribbean, so if you want to judge it by that, then that's kind of a good way to measure if you're gonna be okay or not. And now let's move on to Hollywood Studios. I think by now everybody has heard of the amazing Tower of Terror attraction. That's this haunted hotel where you get in the elevator, and not only does the elevator go up and down really fast, but it also moves forward. Of course, if you're afraid of heights, this is not going to be a ride for you. But if you have like back or neck issues, I'm not sure that this is necessarily one you have to worry about, but it's your back and it does go down and stop pretty quickly, so it's up to you. Another somewhat new area of the Hollywood Studios park is the amazing Star Wars Galaxy's Edge land, and there are 2 attractions in there that you also can't see from the outside. The first one is Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. This is another one of these simulator rides where you're sitting in a moving vehicle thing and looking at a very high definition television screen while you're also having to interact with what is happening there, and depending on what's happening in the controls in the cabin, that changes what happens in your experience. But I would say as far as simulators go, this is a pretty mild simulator. So even if you feel sick on something like Star Tours, the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride is even mellower than that as far as the motion goes. It's kind of a ride that anybody could do. The other big attraction, which is super popular in Galaxy's Edge, is called Rise of the Resistance, and this is something that I don't think everybody could do. This is a very long experience from the first show element until the end. There are several ride systems working together. If you're a Star Wars fan, this is probably the closest that you will ever get to really feeling like you're in a Star Destroyer and being chased by Kylo Ren. It's the closest you're ever gonna get to feeling like you're really there. You end up in a moving ride vehicle, you know, kind of like a golf cart with no roof on it. And this does go forwards and backwards and up and down quickly. So if you're really sensitive to motion, and especially like a free fall motion, might want to consider skipping this one, unfortunately, because it is so amazing. Another new ride that's really cool is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. If you remember the great movie ride right in the middle of the park, this is what has taken over that building. This is a pretty simple ride as far as the motion goes, but there is one scene, a really cute scene, where you stop to take a dance lesson in these vehicles and they start shimmying from left to right, and everybody gets like thrown to one side and thrown to the other side and back. And I think especially if you have lower back problems or neck problems, that's gonna be a problem for you. So either skip it or make sure that you get seated on the one side or the other side so you can really hold on to the wall and brace yourself, and that you don't get like sort of flopped back and forth. And now we move on to the final attraction that we're going to talk about in Hollywood Studios, and also probably the least comfortable thrill ride that Disney has produced. I'm talking about the Rock and Roller Coaster. This roller coaster starts with a very intense launch into a dark space, and there are hard over-the-shoulder restraints, and because the ride experience is so intense, you're bashing your ears on these restraints the whole time. And if your ears don't hurt enough already, sometimes the music is painfully loud. Like I said, I don't need to ride this roller coaster anymore. I think when I was a teenager, these things wouldn't have bothered me, and I know that we rode it several times on trips in the past, but after this last visit, I just felt like, okay, Rock and Roller Coaster, thank you. I'm done. We're almost to the end. We're gonna get to the Magic Kingdom in just a minute. If you've watched this far in the video, please leave the secret word, people mover, in the comments below so I know you made it this far. There's 4 attractions I want to tell you about in the Magic Kingdom. The Magic Kingdom is the park with the castle in the middle. I'm sure most of you know that by now, and I'm sure most of you have heard of Big Thunder Mountain and Space Mountain. Big Thunder Mountain is a runaway mine train through a mountain, sort of out in the desert. This is a pretty mellow roller coaster. If you go with your kids or your grandkids to your local amusement park and they have sort of a family roller coaster or any kind of mine train themed roller coaster, Big Thunder Mountain is not worse than that. One great thing about this ride is it's a really long experience, and there are no like big whooshes on it, no big drops where you feel like you're plummeting to your death. Another ride that fits in the similar category is the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. This is an incredibly popular roller coaster at the moment. The ride experience is very similar to Big Thunder Mountain with 2 differences. One is the cars are kind of on a gimbal, so they sway a little bit in the corners. It's not a huge thing, and I think there's probably a lot of people who don't even realize that this happens on the ride, but it does. And to tell you the truth, as far as drops where you're going like from a higher elevation to a lower elevation, I think that the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train has an even bigger one of those than Big Thunder Mountain, but neither of those coasters are really wild. One coaster that is really wild though is Space Mountain, and if you are my age range or older, if you haven't been there in a long time, I don't know if I have it different in my memory or if it's just me getting old, but Space Mountain has gotten kind of rough. The first time I rode Space Mountain when I was 18, I felt like I was flying through space. It felt so smooth, and it was just this like free, floating, flying feeling that I remember.
It ain't like that anymore.
I'm not saying it's horrible now. It's definitely re-rideable, at least with my body in the state I'm in, but some of the smoothness is gone. The transitions when you're going up and flattening out and when you're going down and flattening out, they I don't know, they just seem more abrupt to me, and they require a larger amount of tension in my body to make it through till the end. Does that make sense, fellow old people? Do you know what I'm saying? Another really exciting attraction that we got to see running but have not got to ride yet is the Tron roller coaster. This is a roller coaster where you're seated on one of these light cycles in sort of a motorcycle position, and you are launched into a computer world. I haven't ridden it yet. I can't tell you in that sense anything about it, and I haven't watched any videos about it either because I want to be surprised before my first ride. If you have ridden it either in Florida or in Shanghai,
please don't write any spoilers in the comments.
Okay, fellow old people, we've made it to the end of this video. I hope I could help you get prepared for your upcoming trip, or maybe just entertain you for a while talking about the Disney parks. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon. Bye-bye.